We will defeat radical Islamic terrorism, just as we have defeated every threat we've faced at every age and before.
Donald Trump staying on teleprompter and on message, outlining a three-pronged plan to destroy ISIS.
If I become president, the era of nation building will be brought to a very swift and decisive end.
Trump promising to work with any country to fight terrorism and backing down from his previous plan to back away from NATO.
Since my comments, they have changed their policy and now have a new division focused on terror threats. Very good. Very, very good. I also believe that we could find common ground with Russia in the fight against ISIS. Wouldn't that be a good thing?
The second prong, taking immigration screening to the extreme.
In the Cold War, we had an ideological screening test. The time is overdue to develop a new screening test for the threats we face today. I call it extreme vetting. Any who have hostile attitudes toward our country or its principles, or who believe that Sharia law should supplant American law. Those who do not believe in our Constitution or who support bigotry and hatred will not be admitted.
And third, Trump plans to fight ISIS ideologically.
Anyone who cannot condemn the hatred, oppression, and violence of radical Islam lacks the moral clarity to serve as our president.
Trump used his speech to attack the policies of the Obama administration and the fitness of his opponent, Hillary Clinton.
She also lacks the mental and physical stamina to take on ISIS and all of the many adversaries we face.
The focused national security speech coming on the heels of weeks of largely self-inflicted damage. Trump's controversial comments including President Obama and Hillary Clinton being the founders of ISIS, that Second Amendment supporters could do something if Clinton wins, and that he could only lose the election if someone cheated, all leading the conservative Wall Street Journal editorial board to call for Trump to shape up or ship out, writing, if they can't get Mr. Trump to change his act by Labor Day, the GOP will have no choice but to write off the nominee as hopeless. As for Mr. Trump, he needs to stop blaming everyone else and decide if he wants to behave like someone who wants to be president or turn the nomination over to Mike Pence.
We put out a statement today. We watched this, and it's impossible to watch this gross incompetence that I watched last night. And we put out a statement a little while ago, and these people are going crazy. They won't report it properly. Shall I read you the statement? Donald J. Trump is calling for, now listen, you got to listen to this one because this is pretty heavy stuff, and it's common sense, and we have to do it. Remember the poll numbers. 25%, 51%. Remember the poll numbers. Okay, so remember this. So listen. Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on. We have no choice. We have no choice. We have no choice. According to Pew Research, among others, there is a great hatred toward Americans by large segments of the Muslim population. Most recently, a poll from Center for Security Policy released data showing 25% of those polled agreed that violence against Americans, these are people that are here, by the way, people here, 25, not 1%. By the way, 1% would be unacceptable. 1% is unacceptable. 25% of those polled agreed that violence against Americans here in the United States is justified as part, think of that, as part of the global jihad. they want to change your religion. I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think so. Not going to happen. As part of the global jihad, and 51% of those polled agreed that Muslims in America should have the choice of being governed according to Sharia. You know what Sharia is? 51%. Sharia authorizes, and look, this is, it's terrible. Sharia authorizes such atrocities as murder against non-believers who won't convert, beheadings, and more unthinkable acts that pose great harm to Americans, especially women. You look, especially women. Tough stuff. And we have a president that won't even mention the term. And you're talking about numbers like this. Mr. Trump stated, without looking at the various polling data, it's obvious to anybody the hatred is beyond comprehension of such a big portion. Where the hatred comes from and why, we will have to determine. We're going to have to figure it out. We have to figure it out. We can't live like this. It's going to get worse and worse. You're going to have more World Trade Centers. It's going to get worse and worse, folks. We can be politically correct and we can be stupid, but it's going to get worse and worse. Until we are able to determine and understand this problem and the dangerous threat it poses, our country cannot be the victim of horrendous attacks by people that believe only in jihad. These are people who only believe in jihad. They don't want our system. They don't want our system. And have no sense of reason or respect for human life. They have no respect for human life.
Football practice.
Hi, I'm Zach. I'm from Kentucky. I have one question. What day in office will you put Hillary in prison?
So, there's a 6-year statute of limitations, I guess. And Hillary's fighting for a lot. If she makes it, nothing's going to happen. And if she doesn't make it, certainly you have to look into it. You have to look into it very strongly because so many lawyers, whether you watch them on television, whether you read them in the newspapers, whether you see them wherever you see them, very rarely do you see a lawyer that says that she's innocent of this horrible situation. And you actually have to ask yourself, why'd she do it? What's the big deal? Why would she do it? Why would she do that? Other than it's always the same thing with them. It's sneaking around the corner. It's sneaky, dirty stuff. It's gone on like that for years. It's gone on like that for years. So I will tell you, number one, it's not me, but certainly people are going to look. And you know what? If there's anything wrong, and you have to do it, you have to do that. You have to do that because so many people have asked me that same question and you have no idea, and she's being protected. Look, let's face it. Look, it's not complicated. What she did, certainly to me, is certainly she broke the law. To me, what do I know? To me, she broke the law. And it looks so bad from the standpoint of the rest of the country, and even from the standpoint of all those people that did something much less. So many people did something much less. How do you think they feel? How do you think Petraeus feels? How do you think all these other people feel? And here she is. She's got a clear path to running for president. But you know what? The first thing I have to do with Hillary is beat her. The next thing we'll do is we'll look into that.
We will make America great again.
The former president of Mexico, Vicente Fox, he said today, and I'm quoting him, he said, "I'm not going to pay for that, quote, effing wall." So if you don't get an actual check from the Mexican government for $8 or $10 or $12 billion, whatever it will cost, how are you going to make them pay for the wall?
I will, and the wall just got 10 feet taller, believe me. This got 10 feet taller. I saw him make I saw him make the statement. I saw him use the word that he used. I can only tell you, if I would have used even half of that word, it would have been national scandal. This guy used a filthy, disgusting word on television, and he should be ashamed of himself, and he should apologize, okay? Number one. Number two, we have a trade deficit with Mexico of $58 billion a year, and that doesn't include all the drugs that are pouring across and destroying our country. We're going to make them pay for that wall. Now, the wall is $10 billion to $12 billion if I do it. If these guys do it, it'll end up costing $200 billion.
In Campaign 2016 segment tonight, an interview with Donald Trump. We conducted it yesterday before the terror attack in California happened. But many of the themes we talked about are relevant to the Islamic terrorist situation. However, we begin the interview with President Obama traveling to Paris this week for the Global Warming Conference. Let's talk a little policy first off. What did you think of the Global Warming Summit in Paris this week?
I think it's ridiculous. We have bigger problems right now, and to have the president be there for an extended period of time talking about global warming being the biggest problem facing this country is insane. And he ought to get back to work and solve the ISIS problem and solve the problems we have with Russia and Iran. If they spend as much time working on the Iran deal as they did, I mean, this horrible, horrible transaction where we're giving away $150 billion, and which will lead to nuclear proliferation, by the way, he ought to get back here and go back to work.
Do you believe in global warming, climate change? Do you think the world's going to change for the worse because it's getting warmer?
I think that there'll be little change here. It'll go up. It'll get a little cooler. It'll get a little warmer like it always has for millions of years. It'll get cooler. It'll get warmer. It's called weather. I do believe in clean. And I've received, a lot of people don't know this, I've received many environmental awards, many environmental awards for the work I do. And I believe strongly in clean water and clean air. But I don't believe that what they say, I think it's a big scam for a lot of people to make a lot of money. In the meantime, China is eating our lunch because they don't partake in all of the rules and regulations that we do. They're buying our coal. We're not using our coal. They're buying our coal and they're using it. And then they compete because they're spending a lot less money to build their products and to make their products. So I am a believer in clean air and clean water at the highest level.
All right. If you were president, would you invest a lot of money in alternative energy to get away from fossil fuels? And would you limit the amount of coal emissions and other industries into the air?
I want to get away from the Middle East. I want to get away from the monopoly that they once had and they still have to a certain extent. I want to be able to be self-sufficient for the country. Now, due to the new techniques, things that we didn't even know about 3 or 4 years ago, it turns out we have a virtually unlimited supply of fuel right under our feet due to fracking and many other techniques that, frankly, are very new, and we are able to take care of ourselves. I know a lot about wind. Wind is destroying a lot of problems. And number one, it's killing the birds and the eagles, and you see what's happening in California with, if you shoot an eagle, a bald eagle in California, they want to put you in jail, and yet the windmills are killing them by the hundreds.
So you're not a big proponent of wind.
I think it's fine in certain locations. I think it's fine. The problem with wind is it needs tremendous subsidy. Wind needs tremendous subsidy.
I mean, the government's going to have to.
I think wind is fine in certain locations.
Would you invest government money in alternative fuels? Would you do that, or would you just let it go?
I would spend money on certain things. Now, solar always sounds better than it is. You have a 36-year payback. I always want to go solar. I love the idea of solar. And then I do a test, and you get your money back in 36 years. The problem is the panels destroy themselves after 10 years. So it's just, right. You've got to make it economically viable, Bill. Right now, it's not economically viable.
And if it were, then somebody would be marketing it. That's for sure. Now, this morning on Fox and Friends.
It would be wonderful if you could do that, okay. But it has to be viable, yes.
This morning on Fox and Friends, you're talking about ISIS, and you said this. Roll the tape.
We're fighting a very politically correct war.
Yeah. Well, we see that
and the other thing is with the terrorists, you have to take out their families. When you get these terrorists, you have to take out their families. They care about their lives. Don't kid yourself. But they say they don't care about their lives. You have to take out their families.
So what does that mean? You're going to have assassins roaming around shooting the families of the terrorists?
When the World Trade Center came down, the people that knocked it down, the terrorists that knocked it down, put their families on airplanes and sent them back home, mostly to Saudi Arabia, believe it or not.
That was the Bin Laden Bush thing, yes.
And they put them, the Bin Laden disaster.
But
Would you have killed Bin Laden?
Would you have killed Bin Laden's family?
I would have done a very great distress. Look, supposedly they don't care about their own lives. I disagree with that. They want
but you got to define for me. You supposedly take out their families. What does that mean?
Bill, do you think the wives and the families knew exactly what was going to happen with September 11th?
I do,
and I know they did.
All right.
Well, I do. I think they did.
So when you say take
frankly,
out,
the one thing,
what does take out mean?
You're going to have to do what Israel was doing for a period of time. Take out means that you have to wipe out their homes where they came from. You have to absolutely wipe them out. It's the only way you're going to stop terrorism. You have all these cells all over the place.
Would you kill the family members of terrorists? Would you have killed the Bin Laden family?
I don't want to be so bold. I want to tell you they would suffer. They know what was going on. If you look at what happened with these terrorists, they put their wives on the planes. Those wives knew exactly what was happening. The children, everybody knew, but they put their wives and families on those planes. They went home. They knew what was going to happen. They sat back and watched Daddy on television.
How do you know they knew?
Because that's the way life is. Because I'm a realist. That's the way life works.
All right,
the wives knew
Bin
what the
Laden had a lot of wives, and he had some relatives here, and he's over in Afghanistan hatching a plot. I don't know if you can. I don't know. You can't really take them out.
We have to be, Bill. Hey, Bill. We have to be much tougher than we are.
Right.
We're just not doing it right. We have to be much more vigilant, and we have to be much tougher.
Okay.
We can't allow this to happen. They take the wives, they put them on planes, they send them home. Let's go home and let's watch Daddy tonight on television. Knock down the World Trade Center. There has to be retribution, and if there's not going to be retribution, you're never going to stop terrorism.
Continuing now with last night's winner of the New Hampshire primary, Donald Trump. Now, Friday, the feds announced that China is selling $366 billion more merchandise to we Americans than we Americans sell back to the Chinese. $366 billion trade gap. Specifically, how will you fix that?
You know, this is my big point. I've been talking about it for years.
I know, but I want to know how you're going to do it.
Higher than that. Well, listen to me. I'll tell you, okay? We are going to have to go. One of the reasons they're able to do it is they devalue their currency to such an extent. They are the single greatest currency manipulator that's ever been on this planet. And if they don't stop devaluing, we're going to have to charge them a tax on the goods coming in. They, by the way, Bill, just in case you don't know it, they tax our goods going into China. It's a totally unfair deal. And what's happened, every time they devalue their currency, they make it impossible and more difficult for our businesses to deal with China on the other side. The gap is getting bigger and bigger. It's really called the deficit. The deficit is getting bigger and bigger. And unless we have somebody very smart and very tough that understands it, and our president does not understand it, but I understand it better than anybody, we're going to have nothing but trouble.
So you're going to say to them,
505.
If
Bill,
you
it's going to be $505 billion this year.
I'm going to slap a tariff on all Chinese goods coming into the United States. Okay. They then are going to say to you,
yes,
President Trump, we are going to sell all of our bonds that we are holding for America's debt. We're going to flood the market with them and crash your currency. That's what a trade war would do.
They're not going to crash. No. They wouldn't crash. They won't crash our currency. They'll crash their economy. That's what they're going to crash. They start playing that. They will crash their economy. You will have let me explain something. We're too dependent on China. We're too dependent. They will have a depression the likes of which you've never seen if they ever did that. That's what would happen, Bill. I mean, you know what people don't understand in our dealings with China? We have the cards. They don't have the cards.
It's a high
Unfortunately, we have political leaders that don't. We have the cards because they need our economy.
And that was a good, specific answer, and I appreciate that. So now let's go on to your statement. You're going to deport 12 million people. As you have to know, Each one of the 12 million people here illegally is entitled to due process. That means that if Donald Trump, as president, issues a deportation order, they are entitled to a court hearing in front of a judge. With 12 million people, it takes us up to 2,000. They are.
Excuse me.
2,086.
If they're here illegally, Bill, if they're here illegally, they may or they may not be. Just like the argument we had about the anchor babies.
I'm telling you,
in my opinion, you don't need.
All settled law says once you're here, you are entitled to our constitutional protections. Every single case. All right. Just so you know.
I disagree. Okay?
Okay.
I disagree.
All
that doesn't mean I wouldn't do that. That doesn't mean I wouldn't do it.
They'll block
if they're here illegally, I disagree with you.
They'll block it. The federal courts will block it.
They're here illegally, Bill.
Look, Obama just got blocked
They're here illegally.
It doesn't matter. They're entitled to constitutional protections. Obama just got blocked on A, his illegal immigration amnesty, and B, him telling the coal companies that you can't have a certain amount of emissions. He got blocked on both of them.
You and I had an argument not so long ago about the anchor babies, where somebody comes, has the baby here, and they're forever going to be taken care of. And everybody said you need a new constitutional amendment to end that. They turned out to be wrong. I turned out to be right. You just need an act of Congress.
Right.
You don't need a new constitutional amendment. And we had the same discussion.
You can change the law, but
There's
not
a real
retroactively. You can change it, but not
so
retroactively.
Okay. So, Bill, what you're saying would mean that if somebody just walked across the border, and they're here for a couple of days, and a Border Patrol catches them, they can't bring them back. We have to go through a whole long process,
It depends.
right? Because you're not right about that.
They can catch them in the act of crossing. If they catch them in the act of crossing, they can repatriate right away. If they're here and established, they get the due process. All right, one more thing.
Right, I disagree.
All right, okay. That's what makes our program great. We have lively debate. You know that. All right, in Colorado, they legalized pot, okay? $1 billion industry, $1 billion a year industry in Colorado. And all of the dealers, all the pushers are going to Colorado, loading up on the free pot because it's legal, not free, legal, and then zooming around the country selling it. Does that concern you?
It's a real problem.
What would you do?
It's a real problem.
What would you do?
There's another problem. In Colorado, the book isn't written on it yet, but there's a lot of difficulty in terms of illness and what's going on with the brain and the mind and what it's doing. So, it's coming out probably over the next year or so. It's going to come out
But what
loud
would you
and clear,
do
but
to stop it?
It is.
What would you do as president?
I would really want to think about that one, Bill, because in some ways I think it's good and in other ways it's bad. I do want to see what the medical effects are. I have to see what the medical effects are. And by the way, medical marijuana, I am in favor of it 100%. But what you're talking about, perhaps not. It's causing a lot of problems out there.
But the medical marijuana thing is a ruse that I got a headache and I need 2 pounds of marijuana.
It is, but I know people that have serious problems,
but that
and
can be
they
taken
did
care
that,
of.
and it really does help them.
Okay. All right, was that fun? Fun interview? Another one? Fun? You like this show better than anyone, right?
It's always a pleasure after I have 1 hour's sleep coming in from New Hampshire to be on your show.
But
it's always a great honor.
Tan. You still tan, even though you're not getting any sleep. I don't know how that happens. Donald Trump, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Maybe it's good.
And once again, congratulations on the victory in New Hampshire.
This is the most basic human right of all. But Hillary wants to strip it away from women and all others. Hillary Clinton will release violent criminals from jail, more so than even Obama. She has a more open policy than Obama, if that's possible, and put innocent Americans at risk. I'm going to put criminals behind bars and guarantee that law-abiding Americans have the right to self-defense, 100%. Hillary wants to go into the opposite direction. She said that President Obama didn't go far enough when he executed this order, when he signed this order, and he's not going far enough. He's gone so far, he's gone too far, we're going to stop it. And we will unsign lots of different things, including some of those terrible executive orders. Believe me, they're going to be unsigned so fast, they'll be unsigned the first hour that I'm in office, in the first hour that I'm in office. So we're going to be discussing something so important for our country, for our economy, and for getting us all working again and working well again. It's a tax reform that I think will make America strong and great again. Too few Americans are working, too many jobs are being shipped overseas, and too many middle-income families cannot make ends meet. This plan directly meets these challenges and the challenges also of business. It will provide major tax relief for middle income and for most other Americans. There will be a major tax reduction. It'll simplify the tax code. It'll grow the American economy at a level that it hasn't seen for decades. And all of this does not add to our debt or our deficit, but I'll also be discussing some of that at the end because we have to make much better deals, we have to negotiate much harder, and we've got to make our economy strong. Changes for individuals will be at levels that you haven't seen in a long time. We're going to cut the individual rates from 7 brackets to 4. Simplification. 25%, 20%, 10%, and 0. If you're single and earn less than $25,000 per year, or married and jointly earn less than $50,000. So, very important. If you're single and earn less than $25,000 or married and jointly earn less than $50,000, you'll not pay any income tax, nothing. This eliminates very strongly and quickly the marriage penalty, very unfair penalty. It eliminates the AMT, which is the alternative minimum tax. It ends the death tax. It's a double taxation. A lot of families go through hell over the death tax. It reduces or eliminates most of the deductions and loopholes available to special interests and to the very rich. In other words, it's going to cost me a fortune, which is actually true, while preserving charitable giving and mortgage interest deductions, very importantly. It ends the current tax treatment of carried interest. Those are the hedge fund folks that I've been talking about for quite a while. They make a lot of money, carried interest. So it ends the current tax treatment of carried interest for speculative partnerships that do not grow businesses or create jobs and are not risking their own capital. Changes for business. Now, so important because it's all about business. It's all about jobs. We have 93 million people in this country that are in serious trouble, that want to work, they can't work. So for business, no business of any size, from a Fortune 500 company to a mom and pop shop, to a freelancer living from gig to gig, will pay more than 15% of their business income in taxes. Big reduction. A one-time deemed repatriation of corporate cash held overseas at significantly discount, which coming back at a significantly discount, 10%. So it comes back discounted at a 10% tax rate and ends the deferral of taxes on corporate income earned abroad. Now, it's called corporate inversion. It's a huge subject. I've been watching politicians now for years. All talk, no action politicians. I've been watching them for years talking about bringing this money back. The number is probably $2.5 trillion. Everybody agrees it should come back. Republicans, Democrats, everybody. They can't make a deal. They don't know how to go about making a deal. The reason companies aren't bringing it back is the tax is onerous. It doesn't make sense to bring it back. And in fact, many companies are leaving the United States. They're leaving our shores to go and collect their money. They're actually moving out of the United States for two reasons. The taxes are too high, and because they have tremendous amounts of money that they can't bring back into this country when everybody wants them to bring it back in. It's called leadership. We will have that money brought back in. As an example, I have millions of dollars overseas. I can't bring it back into this country. We file papers. We've been doing this for a year and a half. You can't get it back in. So the money stays in other countries, and that's what happens. Not good for us.